We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and Degassis heading into 5.
It's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
With these three going right at it, we see you're getting really, really squirrely. There,
oh, no!
Some contact. Oh, no. Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal, catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.
The field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green, and is pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure green has his hands full coming into T1.
Be your chance. Did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside. Hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Playva going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland.
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, no!
No! Gilliland and Playva come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in 4th place.
Quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lock up there from the 46 car. He's gone deep.
Whoa. I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been absolute tea.
Through dip 50, slowing crest 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short to 5.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, V&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and Simucube, it can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. SimMotion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a SimMotion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for SimMagic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we fuel your passion for sim racing.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round number 1 for group number 3, coming to you tonight from Miami. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Joshua Wilkie. The group 3 action begins tonight with the Formula Vs, where there's a 30-minute race in store for these drivers. No need to worry about a pit stop, only the draft and the pitfalls of this very odd-feeling racetrack. Whether it be the demanding high-speed turns off of the banking into the infield, or the hairpins that can be both a good overtaking opportunity and a point of absolute disaster, this track really has it all. Josh, this is far from the first rodeo that the series has had here, as it was a fixture of the Tuesday night series. But regardless of experience, this place is still a very tough ride and a pretty weird circuit overall. Josh, iRacing has a lot of these really odd rovals on the surface. I want to ask you here at the top of the show, what are your general opinions on road oval courses?
Yeah, hi, thanks a lot, Ron, and welcome for tonight's show here. Yeah, rovals, to be honest, it is definitely one of those points of contention, it seems, between iRacers and real drivers alike, whether or not they're good, or you kind of either really like them a lot and you dig it, or you really don't. I'm on the first one there. I actually don't mind them at all. I really like the Charlotte Roval. As you kind of said at the top of the show here, I've actually never driven around this track at all. I've never actually turned a lap around here. I meant to get one this week and just didn't have the time to get in, so this is going to be a bit of a discovery mission for me. That being said, I've always kind of liked the idea of getting out onto the banking, a little bit of drafting, and then into a good infield if it's a decent one. Just kind of reminding me of Indianapolis already. It looks a little bit flat. We got the same somewhat painted color curbs here, and then a big long stretch out around the banking here, so it should be pretty interesting to see, and I imagine it's going to be quite similar to the last race we had around a roval like this.
I'll tell you what, Josh, it's a very good point that you raised in reference to this track being basically a little bit of an Indianapolis kind of vibe going on, because when this track was originally constructed and opened all the way back in 1995, the original oval layout was actually a 1.5 mile downscaled Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval, had 4 corners around it, all 90-degree bends. It was a very odd track, to be sure. That changed to the normal oval layout that we have to this day. Then they add a little bit more banking in it in the early 2000s to get the oval layout that we have now. The roval layout, on the other hand, this infield section that we're seeing Ryan Campbell, the number 26 car, go through right now, this has been around ever since the track originally was constructed back in 1995. It's really the only holdover is this infield section. I gotta say, in terms of road oval courses, a lot of the times the infield sections can kind of give the vibe of like a ramshackle affair where you know for sure that they weren't really planning on having a section there. They just kind of shoehorned one in. This section, on the other hand, it feels a bit more purpose-built in a way. You got the curbs, you got the tire barriers, not a whole lot of runoff area at all. So if there's an incident, especially on lap 1 where these drivers are going to be feeling really racy, I have a feeling that we're going to be in for a very intriguing night of racing action, to be sure. And it's a racetrack of two halves as well. You got that infield section where these drivers are going to be trying to deal with the corners and maybe getting some overtakes done, but then you go on to this flat-out blast, and in these Formula V race cars, this is going to be such a long flat-out blast and a fantastic overtaking opportunity that these drivers are certainly going to be looking to use. But in this qualifying session, all the cars out there on the racetrack by their lonesome, we're just seeing the true pace form with these drivers. Got a pretty speedy driver at the front. 7 minutes into this 10-minute long qualifying session, it's Morgan the Kid Burkhardt at a 1 minute 40.235, the real-life IMSA driver in the Michelin Pilot Series. Coming out here in the Ray Esports Club Racing League and running very, very strong at the moment in these Formula Vs. Nicholas Rice-Puto, on the other hand, in the number 17 car, he is right behind, about 0.2 of a second separating the two drivers who find themselves on the front row. And then we've got some Weekend Warriors Formula V staples in the form of Jason Green and Chris Montgomery. Jim Brewster rounding out our top 5 as it stands at the moment. Got a pretty packed grid of race cars here, Josh. I think we're in for a really entertaining race.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. It looks like we've got a great field for tonight with a couple new drivers in here as well as you mentioned. There's some league staples as well who are going to be out there racing as well. And it's a good point you bring up there about, you know, a lot of the infields on these Rovals can kind of seem tacked on, like it was an afterthought, like somebody phoned it in, so to speak. This one, yeah, it's already kind of striking me not quite so much. That little section that you mentioned there with the barriers on the side and everything, it actually does look like it's got a little bit of camber inwards and stuff, so there actually is a little bit of character to this one, and it's going to be interesting to see. That big long bank section into that massive straightaway is going to provide a ton of back and forth, and you know, just like last race there, my brain and my PC are going to be taxed here trying to keep up with all the action and the passing that's happening every lap, I think, Ron. So say a little prayer for me, and hopefully we can keep up with all the action out there.
I'll tell you what, I feel like if I reach for my harmonica and start blowing into that, that would sound very similar to some of the fans on your PC by the end of today's broadcast. That is going to be a real big test for your PC, that is for darn sure. I'll tell you what, my PC was already running into some difficulty before we even went on the air. iRacing, for some reason, just did not want to work on me, but we're good to go and ready to rock and roll. 1 minute left to go in this qualifying session. 1 minute 40-second long lap times in these Formula Vs. They're not the quickest race cars in the world, but as we see week in and week out with the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, which you can catch me and Josh on the call for every single Saturday here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, these Formula Vs just seem to put on an incredible show. Regardless of what kind of racetrack we're running at, Homestead is going to be absolutely no different. From the exit of the hairpin of turn number 8 all the way through until the braking zone of turn 2, these drivers are flat out. That is a ridiculously long flat out section. Pretty much, I would say probably about half the lap distance, maybe well over half the lap distance at that, is spent flat out in that one little section. I say one little section. It's absolutely massive. So not the best choice of phrase there to not the best choice of phrase there. That's my dyslexia showing a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit as we get to the end of this qualifying session. And since it is single qualifying, all the cars going to get yoinked back to the pits pretty much right away. The iRacing gods really having it in for some of these drivers getting in contact with some UFO companies that may be in Florida. You know, a lot of weird things happen in the state of Florida. Get in contact with some of them to abduct these drivers and send them back to pit lane. Ready to get that starting grid load up for you in just a couple of minutes. Time for what is going to be a very exciting race, the first race of this Group 3 season. And it's going to be Morgan Burkhardt, the number 40 car, leading them to green at 1 minute 40.235. That's a pretty good qualifying time. Nicholas Rice-Puto in the number 17 car going to join him on the front row, about a quarter of a second between those two drivers in that qualifying session. Jason Green going to be starting in third. Chris Montgomery in fourth. Jim Brewster going to be starting this race in fifth. Gianni Mayuro starting this race in the 6th position. Joshua Justice going to be starting in 7th. Miles Crabb going to be starting in 8th. Andrew Love in 9th. Brian Szynski going to round out your top 10.
And then following that, we have Ryan Campbell in 11th place. Brad Cathcart, one of our staples of the Weekend Warrior Series there, starting in 12th place. Moving on to Michelle Lynn, who is the admin and owner of the V Nights out here on Slow Motion Broadcasting as well. We got Casey Knight, who was a fast mover a couple weeks ago, Jason Grider in 15th, Matt Thompson in 16th, Jameson Huffman in 17th, Seth Spoolman, who had a pretty good outing there the last time around, if I'm not mistaken, in 18th place, kind of down a bit from where you would usually see him. Dan Stasinski's had a bit of a rough season here so far, but looking to move up today, hopefully. In 19th, Edger, I'm going to try this one here, Sentinelli in 20th, Joaquin Effinger in 21st, Wayne Buttermore, always out there turning laps, probably the biggest staple here in the Weekend Warrior Series. Actually, we don't talk about Wayne enough. He's out there racing every week, has been for years. Always love to see him out there. Jacob Schilling in 23rd, Mike Key in 24th. I think we still have a couple left here, Ron. 24th, Steven, not even going to try that one. Tegzika, well, we'll have to get that pronunciation off of Steven when we get a chance there. In 25th, Gary DePiro in 26th, John A. Casey in 27th, Jeffrey Flipowski in 28th, Joe Camilleri in 29th, Andrew Rosencroft in 30th, and rounding out the back of the field is Russ Lumberg.
I gotta say, I kind of feel bad, Josh, just throwing you in the midst of the hornet's nest with the name pronunciations. I believe it may be Stephen Tiska, I believe, would be Tiska or Tyska. We'll have to maybe have some word between now and the next race for Group 3, which isn't going to be until December the 11th at Sebring. Of course, all going to be broadcasted here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, so I kind of feel bad that I let you go through 21 cars or something like that. Now you know
That's okay,
I
Ron,
feel
we're learning
for
here.
another. I mean, there's a broadcast that we're going to be doing tomorrow on a different broadcaster. You should stay tuned here for Slow Motion Broadcasting for some of the best action, though. But there's a broadcast that we're going to be doing tomorrow where me and my co-commentator on the air for that one usually have to go through like 30 names apiece for the starting grids for those races. So that right there is a test more than anything else. I can assure you that. I feel like you've heard me blow out my vocal cords doing some of those starting grids, but still, yeah. Oh boy, my cough drop supply is very valuable to me as a broadcaster, but these drivers certainly going to be valuing the slight amount of visibility that they get around this racetrack. It is going to be incredibly foggy. I'm curious as to whether or not these same weather conditions are going to convert over to the Spec Racer Ford race later on this evening. You can see them heading through the high banks of 3 and 4 on the oval, 9 and 10 on this Roval layout. Only 10 turns, about 2.3 miles, really 2.2 miles actually. But it's a small course, it's a short one. In these Formula Vs, the lap times are a little bit long, but it's still going to produce some pretty epic racing. I have a feeling that the finish of this race is going to be fantastic as well. That pace car going down pit lane, not going to hit the sand barrels like we saw in the NASCAR Cup race this past weekend, but the green flag's down, the drivers are on their way. You can see the field jumbled up already. Now's Montgomery not getting off to a good start at all. He's going to be dropping down like a rock as the field now heads their way off into turn number 1. Burkhardt still in the lead, the number 17 car of Rice Pudo, trying to get a move done on the outside, but not close enough. You can see the field fanning out 3, 4, and even 5 wide. A little bit farther in the back. Who is that nearly running off into the dirt heading into turn number 3? And that's a flip. Who is that upside down? That, I believe, may either be Ryan Campbell or Edgar Santinelli. Not sure who that was. May have been Campbell. I'm going to take a look at a replay as soon as we can to see that drama heading down into turn number 3. I was preoccupied with Joshua Justice, I believe it was, running off into the dirt, trying to get a move done into the corner. But right as I looked away from that, I saw a car upside down. So that is going to be a major amount of drama. Only 3 corners into this 30-minute long race. And you can see some more drama. That's coming at turn number 6. That's a car spun around. That's Jeffrey Flipkowski. He's gone off the circuit. Thankfully, compared to some of the other competitors, Filipkowski not going to flip that race car, thankfully for him. I think the other car involved in that may have been Wayne Buttermore. And now looking at another incident, this time heading down into the hairpin at turn number 8. Brad Cathcart, the Aussie in the 905. He's gone off the circuit to Buttermore. Gonna get clipped by Cathcart rejoining the track. That just looked like really bad timing for the both of them. But oh my God, Josh, we've got some 3-wide action already.
3 wide out front already. This is going to happen all race, I think, here. And it looks like we got here, who is it? Miles Crabb, of course, in the back, just watching like last weekend as well, or like last race as well. Just hoping here that somebody's going to make a little mistake and allow him to just jump away with it like last time. But it looks like he's going 3 wide as well, Ron. So I think this is what we're going to see the whole race.
Holy crap-oly. You can see that field covered by barely any air. The top 7 at this point covered by about a second. 2 by 2 heading through turn number 3. That is Myro and Burkhardt going side by side. Burkhardt going to drop down to second. Rice Pudo and Justice now battling hard for the final podium position. Here's Burkhardt looking to try and battle back in the number 40 car. They're going to be side by side, heading in that small little flat out blast down into turn number 6. Battle last late breakers between Burkhardt in the 40 and the 17 car, the 19 car, my apologies, on the outside. The 17 of Rice Pudo looking to try and get that move done finally on Justice. He may be SOL because you can see that train of race cars looking to try and overtake him, but looking at the fight continuing on side by side with Myro and Burkhardt. Who is going to prevail in this fight? Looks like Myro and Burkhardt still swapping positions. Looks like Justice makes it 3 wide. Justice on the inside line. Gonna try and get that move done. I think he may have been able to do it successfully, at least on Burkhardt. However, he's now gonna be in a real tricky spot. Look at this pack. 5 cars covered by virtually nothing. Well, you could say the top 10 covered by nothing at all. This is an incredible race that we have on our hands thus far. Not even finished with the second lap of the race. And look at Justice trying to battle hard. This fight is just absolutely ridiculous, Josh.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see this down this front straight into T1 over and over again here. And, you know, as we like to mention every race there, this is only really going to bring more people into the fight, and it just gets more and more and more frenetic until something has to give. And let's hope that that doesn't happen here, but it is looking a little hairy. Whoa, that is some good driving there.
Turn 1.
Wow, beautiful driving from everyone.
Indeed.
Yeah,
beautiful driving. Oh, and right as we say that, that is a spin. That right there going off the circuit was Myro in the number 19 car. He is going off the circuit. A simple spin coming out of turn number 2. He's got to take 1 car out of this fight. Gotta say, though, those drivers, I think they need to buy a lottery ticket if they can, considering they went 3 wide. Heading, and actually, no, 3 wide. At this point, 3 wide, we've seen enough of it thus far. 4 wide, heading down into turn number 1. Do these drivers simply not fear death? And that's Green going off the circuit. That's a big hit for him. Brewster with a beautiful slide coming out of turn number 6. A fantastic save from the driver of the 933 car. But that was a big moment with Jamison Huffman and Jason Green. They came to blows heading into turn number 6. It was definitely wheel-to-wheel contact. That's given major damage to Green. He's going off the circuit. The back of Huffman's car, the engine cover is already off, probably already on for sale on eBay by this point. But looking at this replay of this collision between these two, Huffman in the 89, closing. He just missed. Oh, yeah, that was contact with Brewster as well. That's what sent Jim off the track, and you could see that save from Brewster in the 933 car. But Huffman, I think, he just outbroke himself by a country mile, heading down into turn number 6. Tough luck.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like there. He just didn't really anticipate the accordion effect happening in front of him there, and he just got caught out. And it honestly looks like he tried to do his best not to really take anybody out there, but it was just nothing doing, and that was it. It could not help but giggle going into T1 there. It's just a wall of cars going into T1. I don't even know how many wide it was. You just call it a wall of cars pretty much.
I think it has broken up somewhat, but still the top 5 consisting of Rice, Pudo, Burkhardt, Montgomery, Justice, and Crab covered by about a second, heading through turn number 4 at the beginning of this 4th lap of the race. But you can tell in these Formula V races that it doesn't matter if you're leading the race. You can find pace just about everywhere. Look at Brian Szynski. He's in the 841 car, running in the 12th position as it stands at the moment. And last time by, he just set the best lap of the race at a 1 minute 40.39. He's now lost out on the spots to Myra, who's looking to cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. Had that spin heading through turn number coming out of turn number 2 earlier on in this race. That took him out of that front pack fight, but he is still dicing a little bit farther down the running order, just barely inside the top 10. Now gets a move done to slip his way up into 10 side by side with himself and Schilling on that outside line, going to yield. Will he have to yield to Szynski though? Side by side, heading through turn number 8. Looks like they're going to be single file coming out of the corner. But you could be single file coming out of the corner. You could be a half a second in front of your competitors coming out of turn number 8. And then you could be 4 wide, even 5 wide, heading down to that start-finish line. Looking at this may be some 4 wide stuff brewing. It is 4 wide action. Look at Justice on that outside line. Montgomery right there on the top, right between the car of Burkhart and the car of Justice. I'm not even sure how to judge a 4 wide thing. You usually say 1 in the middle. There's 2 in the middle. Looking at that 3 wide. Look at Justice getting the move done. Hard braking, and he gets it done successfully. A little bit of contact, I think, with Rice Puda and Burkhart coming out of turn number 2. Looks like they're going to stay line of stern, but that was a beautifully executed move from Justice last time by, sending a pretty good lap in the process. But they can't battle too hard, as we've seen a lot in the Formula V Weekend Warriors series here on SMB. You could have a battle, but it'll turn into an absolute hornet's nest if you lose sight of the cars behind. Running on board with Jim Brewster, running in the 7th position as it stands at the moment. Got Andrew Love in the 544 right in front of him. And I think if those front 5 continue to fight as hardly as they have, we may end up seeing that pack become even more intense, with the likes of Love and Brewster catching up.
Yep, absolutely. Every week seems to be kind of the same group of suspects there that are sort of hanging in the wing here. Just hoping that they're going to be able to draft up to this other pack here. And if they keep fighting, like you said, Ron, that's exactly what's going to happen. You can't go 4 wide, 5 wide in a brick of cars into T1 every lap and not lose some time. That being said, it might be happening right behind them with these guys as well. So we're going to keep a bit of an eye on these fights in the back a little bit today as well, and see if we can't see how this is going to shake out, as well as the guys on the front here. So we're going 4 wide here again in the front, I bet, by the looks of it. And I would not be surprised if we have a little peek back at the Andrew Love and Jim Brewsters of this pack as well. We're going to have exactly the same thing back there.
Oh, and you could see them reeling in some lap traffic as well. This is a dangerous moment for these drivers, but Burkhart and Justice side by side. Montgomery and Rice Pudo side by side. Miles Crab catching up to it as well. And look at Michelle Lynn jumping in front of the likes of Casey Knight, Jim Brewster, and Andrew Love in that pack right behind to slip her way up into the 6th position. She's now 7 spots from where she started in this race. Casey Knight right behind, going to join Michelle in that 7 position gained club. Currently not the hard charger at the moment. The hard charger is Russ Lundberg in the 129, up 14 spots, running in the 17th position at the moment. It shows how big of a pack that we have in this race. Looking at Lundberg, there he is in that 129 car. Not a whole lot of positions to gain at the moment, considering that he finds himself, I wouldn't say in no man's land. However, he has a little bit of a gap to himself and Dan Szynski in 16th. However, these drivers, as much as they're battling hard, they still have a lot to lose. Running in the top 5, a small little mistake and a small little bit of contact. I saw it in the practice session earlier on, Josh, with contact heading through the high banks of the Homestead Miami Speedway. We may see some bump drafting in these Formula Vs, and with bump drafting, that can occasionally lead to an absolute disaster. Look at Crab, though. He is reeling in these cars like it is going out of style. He could see just the pace differential, the speed differential between these drivers. Crab currently clocking in at about 103 miles an hour, which is a couple of miles an hour quicker than this pack in front of him. That's a reason why that gap has diminished. You can see these drivers covered by barely any air. Crab going to maybe get a 4-for-1 deal heading down into turn number 2. Not going to get any positions gained, though. He overtook the lapped car that I believe was Wayne Buttermore. But right now, this pack is still insane. Montgomery now leading at Burkhart in P2. Rice Pudo, Justice, and Crab running at your top 5. Looking at a fight involving Love and Michelle Lynn. They were side by side. They finally single file out, heading down into turn number 4. I'm curious, Josh, I know we saw it at the beginning of this race, kind of neglected it since all the drama that happened afterwards. I'm curious if we can maybe load up a replay in the not-too-distant future of the incident we saw with Ryan Campbell ending up on his lid. He's still on the lead lap in this race, which is truly shocking, albeit it's about a 1 minute and 6 seconds back of our race leader of Chris Montgomery. But it shows you that in these races, you can have a major moment like that and still find yourself in a pretty decent position. These races can get hectic, even though these drivers are very fast, very respectful, and clean racers as well. With how hard they're battling, some fisticuffs can break out occasionally. And I mean, hey, to finish first you have to finish. I've read that in a fortune cookie before, but I think one driver who's probably not going to be.
See if we can't get a replay here. This should be at Ron O'Brien.
Let's let me talk you through this. Josh, you can talk through this.
Oh my goodness, yeah, so I kind of missed it. Again, it's very difficult to see exactly what happened to him there. I'm going to load up another one. See if we can't see what set this off. So it's Brad Cathcart. Just looks like he lost the rear of the car just a little bit, and they went wheel to wheel, and unfortunately that just flipped Ryan like a tiddlywink.
That is that's definitely a phrase that you just said there, Josh. I gotta say, Casey Knight was a tiddlywink away from getting involved in that incident. She dodged that virtually by the skin of her teeth, so that was an incredibly close moment for Casey Knight. I mean, that could work out pretty well for her, currently running in the 9th position, involved in that close fight with herself, Love Brewster, and Michelle Lynn. So that'd be pretty good if they avoid that incident just barely heading through turn number 4. And ends up blossoming into a pretty good result. Certainly can't rule it out. I mean, this may end up turning into a battle for the win if we have some major drama right in front. Look at that.
Boy.
That was Buttermore very slow coming out of turn number 6. That kind of stacked up Love. Brewster may try and go for a move. Lynn has a good run. She may try and go for it around the outside. Meanwhile, looking at the front 2x2, heading down into the turn 8 hairpin. Looks like Royce Puto going to lead them onto that back flat out ledge. Justice in second, Montgomery in third. Burkhardt and Crab rounding out your top 5. Gotta say, Miles Crab not having a very good turn of pace thus far in this race. Now 2.4 seconds back of the leader of Royce Puto. So it was a 5-car fight. It's very much turned into a 4-car one, as you could just barely see Crab in the back a shot as they head through the oval 3 and 4 section. 3 wide may turn into 4 wide soon.
Yeah, it looks like we are racing here for sure. They have not held back much. We're going 4 wide, 3 wide all over the place. They're racing midfield too. I'm not really sure what happened to Miles Crab there. He was right in this pack and then seemingly just keeps losing all the time in the midfield. I'm not sure if that's because he's getting in squabbles or if he's just doesn't have the pace through the infield, which would be a little bit of a surprise to me. But yeah, it's a little bit surprising to see him so far back every lap here and then kind of catching up. I'm assuming he must have had an issue there that we missed last lap somewhere.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly what may have been the issue for him, but nevertheless, regardless of how that issue came about, he is the one dealing with the consequences, running effectively in no man's land in the 5th position as it stands currently. But I mean, hey, halfway into this race, less than halfway into this race, would be a bit more precise. Still a lot to gain, a lot to lose as well, considering how intense that pack has been right in front of him. He could very well find himself winning this race. I certainly cannot rule it out at all, but looking at that fight, Lynn, Brewster, Love, and Knight. Knight went nearly off the track, heading down into turn number 6 just a couple of moments ago, very fast into the corner, lost out on a lot of time. There is Casey Knight in that 210 car. Not having a good run through 6, but she is going to have the benefit of the drift going onto the back straightaway out of turn number 8. The long flat out section to bring this lap to a close. It's brought us some very incredible moments thus far. This pack has certainly given us some awesome fights. I think we have one on our hands with Lynn and Brewster. They're side by side, heading through 3 and 4 at the moment. Brewster going to maybe get that move done, definitely get that move done as Lynn tucks back into Brewster's slipstream. Looking at this fight, it's absolute pandemonium in this race, Josh. I feel kind of bad because I feel like I haven't gotten a word in edgewise, but I feel like the racing gods have just not given me an opportunity to pass it along. As look at Love coming out of nowhere, trying to get a move done on Lynn, gets it done successfully. Now side by side with Brewster, and he gets it done heading into the braking zone of turn number 2. Love coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, the draft around here is unreal. That straight and those 2 bank corners there leading out into the infield are so long that you can draft past somebody and then the person behind them can draft and pass back again if you get it just right. It's that long, so it is definitely going to continue shuffling back and forth here. And just like the last race, you could probably be in 7th or 8th place in a line of cars here and end up getting a better draft than everybody else and just smoke everybody across the line. So it's really anybody's game. And having a clean car and being there at the end is going to be the key to winning this race. And I would imagine not being the guy in the front either. Hopefully we don't have a scenario like we had in SRF and Weekend Warriors where somebody decides to actually literally sandbag the car and stop on the side of the road, let everybody else by so that they can draft them and win the race. We don't like to see things like that out here. But chances are what we are going to see is somebody come from 4th or 5th or 6th or maybe even farther back depending on how this line of cars ends up on the last lap, right to the front. And that can happen around tracks like this, and it happens often. So as long as we can keep it clean on the infield and as long as we don't end up clipping wheels and end up upside down and stuff, then you will end up having a pretty good shot at the end in this, especially in this pack of 4 or 5 cars here on the front.
As long as I don't punch my microphone anymore, I feel like I will be able to call the end of this race. Sorry if that got picked up there a couple of moments ago. But speaking of picking up, Justice picking up a spot side by side with Burkhardt, heading down into turn number 2. And I gotta say, Justice is a driver that I'm very much keeping my eyes on in terms of this fight. I remember one of the last times the old Tuesday night Ray Esports Racing League ran at this track. It was Justice winning it in that Spec Racer Ford category. Definitely going to see a lot of him coming up later on this evening at this very racetrack. A real-life Spec Racer Ford driver. He is quick in the Formula Vs on iRacing as well. So Justice, certainly a driver that I'm keeping my eyes on both this FV race and the Spec Racer Fords coming up later on tonight. So we'll have to see what Justice can do in that number 99 car. Looking at some 3-wide action involving Brad Cathcart in the 905. Philip Kowski in the number 21, and that was John Casey. He's now going side by side with, heading down into turn number 3 and 4. Looks like we nearly saw a bit of rally action for Brad Cathcart, but now Philip Kowski in the number 21 car. Third tries the charm, trying to get a move done on Casey. It looks like they're going to be line astern heading down into turn number 6. Battles up and down this field.
Yeah, battles everywhere, of course. That was a close one. Looks like he's got his rear engine lid back on here, too, Philip Kowski. I think he must have pulled into the pit there and got either that or iRacing snapped it back into place, as it does sometimes. Looks like perhaps up the road here we may have an incident with Russ Lumberg. I'm going to go to a quick replay here and see what happened. It looks like he's by himself on the track here. Doesn't look like he's around anyone else. May have just been an overslow for us here, or perhaps just a little spin all by himself. Yep. Just asked a little too much of the rear end there. Came around to the front. Unfortunate. Looks like he's going to rejoin safely and get back in there.
And that right there, I believe, is a commentator's jinx from me. Russ was putting together a very good race. Was a hard charger up 17 spots from where he started. With that spin, now he is no longer the hard charger. I feel like I will not say who it is, because A, they're tied at the moment, and B, I do not want to jinx another driver. But looking at these drivers who are certainly hard chargers up towards the front, Montgomery leading it over Burkhardt, over Justice, over Nicholas Rice-Puto in the number 17 car. All of these drivers have led this race at a certain point in time, but with 10.5 minutes on the clock, Josh, I feel like it's certainly becoming crunch time. These drivers that were still racing aggressive, it looked like Montgomery and Burkhardt were basically bump drafting, heading down into the hairpin of turn number 8, but Burkhardt going for a spin. That is going to be a big moment for the driver of the number 40 car. Was that on his own, or did he have a little bit of help to spin that car around? Burkhardt, a big spin. That's going to be out of P2. So the pole sitter of this race having a big moment. Let's take a look at it, Josh.
Yeah, so that was definitely an attempt at a bump draft there. It didn't go well. It looks like almost spun him, and then he just took a little too much curb, I think, all by himself. We're going to take another quick look from above here just to make sure he didn't get a bump there, but I think honestly it just kind of unsettled the car. So you can see Morgan going in for a little bump draft here, a bit cheeky in these cars to say the least. Almost didn't work out for him. And then he comes in here. I don't think he got a tap or anything there, Ron. I think maybe he just took a bit of curb and that was it. Let's get one more quick look at her here if we can.
Here we go from the helicopter camera, the blimp camera, the drone camera, whatever the hell we want to call it. Following Burkhardt, you can see him arcing his way into the corner. It was Justice who was behind him, and Justice did not even touch him. Neither of those cars touched him. I gotta say, well done from both Justice and Nicholas Rice-Puto to avoid that spinning car of Burkhardt. That's gonna sting, though, for Morgan. He's now running down in 8th. Going to relegate him back into this fight with Michelle, Lynn, Brewster, and Love. Casey Knight was involved in this fight. However, I think there may have been a moment for her in that 210 car that's dropped her back down to 9th, still 5 spots where she started in this race. So certainly not a bad race at all, but looking at this fight now, 3 cars in it. It was a 5-car pack to begin this race. Now certainly turned into a 3-1. But these 3 drivers, they've led laps thus far in this race. They are hard chargers. Some of them have won in the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series in the past. Others have won in the Ray Esports Club Racing League, or whatever it was formerly known as, whichever name you want to go about with. Justice is that driver, and he is trying to get a move done to go up towards the front of the field. Now going to be side by, actually I don't even think he's side by side anymore. I think he cleared the both of them. Yes, he did. Montgomery though going to have the draft. They're going to be side by side heading down into turn number 1. Montgomery trying to take the lead from Justice. Justice going to hang it on that outside line, going to arc it in through the corner. Maybe go for a move back into turn number 2. It looks like he's going to stay behind the 313 car of Montgomery. But all these drivers at the front, Josh, have some pretty good experience in either Formula V Weekend Warriors machinery or in the Ray Esports Club Racing League, or the Ray Esports Racing League as it was formerly known as. These drivers all have a really good shot to win this race. I mean, just based off the pace they've shown, they have a really good shot. I think trying to pin down who's going to win this race, it's like trying to pin the tail on the donkey when the donkey is on the other side of the equator.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's a fairly good analogy there, Ron. There's definitely a group here. Chris Montgomery, Josh Justice, Miles Crabb, and Morgan Burkhardt are, they're some of the best drivers in the series here for sure. Nicholas Resputo is new to me, but obviously can hang with these guys as well. So we've got a really good race on our hands here. It's been really respectful so far. A little surprised to see Morgan make kind of a solo a solo incident there by himself. Don't think there's enough time for him to catch back up to this pack, but nonetheless, Montgomery, Justice, and Resputo here are going to have a great race till the end, I think, and it looks like it's just going to be between them from now on, at least for the top 3.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm with you here, Josh. I think it's only going to be these 3, unless there's some major drama, which I certainly wouldn't rule out with how hard these drivers have been racing. I would not rule out some fisticuffs breaking out and one of these drivers possibly ending up on their lid between now and the end of this race, which is coming up in the not too distant future, coming up to just 6 minutes on the clock, a handful of laps left for these drivers, and you've got some very talented race car drivers up towards the front. Montgomery leading at Justice in P2, and Nicholas Rice-Puto running in the 3rd position. Done a little bit of research to see what Nicholas drives in real life. I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that he is a Spec Miata driver in the SCCA, so that's a nice little bow to wrap around with that storyline with the driver of the number 17 car. The driver from Florida, we can call him the hometown hero if you want, but either way, he's looking to become the hero of this fight, running in 3rd at the moment. However, running 3rd at the end of this race, even coming out of the turn number 8 hairpin for the final time in this Formula V race, that's not a bad position to be in the slightest, because you're going to get the most amount of draft and you're going to have the most amount of time to try and get it done. I'll try and time these drivers as they come out of the hairpin. On throttle now at 24 minutes and 44 seconds on the clock, and we'll have to wait and see how long these drivers are spending flat out to not only end this lap but also begin it as well. But either way, if you're Nicholas Rice-Puto or whoever it may be running in 3rd coming out of the turn 8 hairpin for the final time, that's not a bad position to be in the slightest.
Yeah, no, if I was him, Ron, you're 100% right. If I was him, I would just be watching these 2 guys now. Just stay behind them, wait. I mean, you might even get lucky here. They're going too wide, fighting each other into T1. Kind of something you have to do in Josh Justice's position here. You're going to have to pull out, or you're going to end up just getting past, and it might just get away from you. But if I was in, Resputo's definitely in the best position right now to just kind of sit back here and watch what happens, and then hopefully just be able to strike in the draft on the last lap at the last moment here and just take it. And unfortunately, the 2 in the front are kind of sitting ducks for a pass like that. I'm actually going to go back in our replays really quick here, Ron, and see if we can't find out what happened to Casey Knight.
Ooh, you can see she was leading this train. You got Brewster right behind, and I think it may have been a little bit of a bad bump draft between Brewster and Knight. Knight slowing, so not sure what in the world happened there. It was definitely a Code Brown moment, that is for darn sure. I saw that car mega sideways hang down into turn number 8 as a result of that Duff bump draft. I mean, Homestead, it may go the way of Atlanta in the NASCAR world. They may turn into a super speedway a little bit farther down the line. But bump drafting on the Roval is certainly not ideal, even in these draft-heavy Formula V race cars. Looking at that other angle, though, Josh, I'm not entirely sure if they were connected before that. So maybe it wasn't even bump drifting. Maybe it was just Casey Knight possibly having a slight hardware failure. I mean, we have seen in the past in the Ray Esports / Weekend Warriors world some drivers having some hardware issues in the form of like a VR headset giving out on them. So maybe that's what happened to Casey. Not sure what happened there. That was very strange.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Ron. It's one of those things where something by the looks of it just wasn't really boding well for confidence and just decided to, oh, there we go. I think we're just getting it in chat here. It looks like we got a broken shifter. So, I mean, that'll do it, right? And if you're a respectful driver with the other drivers around you, you're just going to pull off there and make sure that you don't wreck someone else's race. So unfortunate for Casey Knight there. Hopefully next week she will be able to get her shifter fixed up and we can have her back in the fight again, because it looked like she was doing for, it was going to be a good result there.
I mean, that's the thing with iRacing. Your chances of doing well in a race are so reliant on just small little technical issues. Sometimes you need to get your shift together to be able to contend for a race. That was a really bad pun. I would like to wholeheartedly apologize for that. But getting back to the racing action, looking at some battling right towards the tail end of the top 20 between Jason Greider and Jeffrey Filipkowski in the number 21 car. Looking at another fight involving Seth Spallman and Brad Cathcart. You can see those two nearly bump drafting, heading down the start-finish straightaway. But one thing that's kind of getting my attention at this point of the race, Josh, is the fact that Morgan Burkhardt has made his way back up into the 4th position. So the driver of the number 40 car putting on a really rousing recovery drive. And if there is some sort of collision between the front 3, who knows? We could see Burkhardt maybe sneak away with the victory in this race. One thing is for certain, though. I believe they're coming to the white flag this time by, Josh. So only one more lap of racing action here for the first ever Formula V race for group number 3 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. Montgomery is going to be leading them, heading through 3 and 4 for the second to last time. I couldn't even say leading them, coming to take the white flag, because, I mean, that would just be an ill-fated sentence for me to say, which can age about as well as milk in the Arizona sun in about 5 seconds' time. But he did take the white flag. The real question is he going to take the checkered? That remains to be determined. We got 2.2 miles left for these drivers to try and tackle. Montgomery, Justice, and Rice Puto are going to be the ones contending for the victory. Burkhardt in 4th. He would be the one inheriting the victory if these 3 drivers were to swipe each other off the racetrack and go off in a cloud of dust and steam, backing it into the tire barriers instead of into victory lane. Nicholas Rice Puto, who we mentioned earlier on, probably about 5 to 10 minutes ago, Josh, talking about how he's probably playing a patient waiting game at this point, running in 3rd. He may not have the lead, but one thing that he has is the patience. He also has a knowledge of how those two are racing in front of him, and he's also going to have the draft, which is so important in these Formula V races, heading down into the turn 8 hairpin for the final time in this race. Hoping to not see what we saw a couple of seasons ago with the Spec Racer Fords, where it was a parking lot heading through turn number 8. Hoping that doesn't happen here in the Formula V's. Looks like they're all maintaining normal speed. Gasse, Burkhardt, and that pack with himself, Brewster and Crab, are slowly reeling him in, but I think they're just not going to have enough time. Speaking of time, 2-1-0. Coming to the checkered flag this time by Montgomery has a gap over Justice and Rice Puto, but the real question is, will he be able to hold on to that? You can see that gap closing. Rice Puto trying to get the move done. A little bit of contact with himself and Justice heading through the high banks. This is going to be a race to the checkered flag. A photo finish. Justice on that outside line. Rice Puto cutting to the inside. Montgomery going to be the meat in that sandwich and coming to take the checkered flag. Winning this race is going to be the number 99 car of Joshua Justice.
Wow,
holy
what a
cow.
finish. What a finish. That was so close and super awesome for Josh Justice. He needs a win out there. He's been pushing really hard on a bunch of different series here. So amazing for him to get the win today and holding out right till the very end. I mean, he must have won by a hair there. But by 14 thousandths of a second. So, I mean, it's about as close as it gets, Ron. And that was a hard-fought win for Josh.
It was inches between he and Nicholas Rice Puto for the victory, and it was also inches between himself, Montgomery, and Rice Puto to having an absolute disaster befall their way, heading through the high banks for the final time in this race. I mean, I said earlier on that Justice was going to be a driver that we had to keep our eyes on because he can manage those runs and he can get the runs coming on to the final flat out blast so well, and that's what helped him out. You could see it was probably about 6 inches, half of a nose cone in these Formula V cars that separated Justice and Rice Puto after over 30 minutes of racing action. Taking a look at this angle from the stands of a brilliant photo finish. Justice, though, timing that run to absolute perfection, ends up victorious. You can see the gap 3 wide, coming to take the checkered flag. That was a brilliant way to round off the first Formula V race of this Group 3 season. Justice hitting the high banks, going to celebrate a well-earned victory for the driver of the number 99 car, kicking off the season and kicking off tonight in very good fashion. He's going to have a really good shot of things coming up later on for the Spec Racer Ford race. I mean, he's a Spec Racer Ford driver in real life, so you got to imagine he has a very good shot. And here's a little bit of a Formula V tradition here, folks. They are wrecking everything after the race. This is a demo derby. I'm curious as to where exactly they're doing this. I believe it is the final chicane on the Road Course A configuration. I believe there's some tire barriers there. They're basically made out of the matter of white dwarf stars, and if you hit them, you have a very wild ride on your hands, to say the very least. But Josh, I'll let you call this, because I feel like if I was calling these two coming to maybe take the jump, I feel like I'd probably pee myself with laughter.
Yeah, I have a feeling something's in the works here. Oh, there's one toast and one into the attenuator. Well, the attenuator is probably the best place to wreck a race car, I would think, on this entire track. So it's always a good tradition here to see, them have some fun at the end. It's not something you get to do in a real race car. Andrew Love just grabbing across the grass here, desperately trying to destroy the car as much as he can. And he has succeeded fully, I believe. Nope, not quite. Still moving. So yeah, it's always great to see a little bit of fun at the end. And that's one of the things, in sim racing that you can do. You can smash the car into something and just load it back up and go have some more fun with it with your buddies. So it's always fun to play around a little bit at the end of the race here. But we probably should get into race 1 results here, maybe an interview, and then I believe we are on to our second race here, Ron. So here's some results for you.
Well, thank you very much, Josh, for that. That's another Joshua Justice winning it. Nicholas Rice Puto going to finish in second. Chris Montgomery going to round out your podium in third. Shows you how things can change. Justice was second, going on to that flat-out blast for the final time. Ends up winning it. Rice Puto was in third. Montgomery was leading it. Pretty much a complete shuffle of those racers to take the checkered flag. Jim Brewster going to finish a little bit farther back in fourth. Josh, I think we may need to load up a replay of Brewster and Burkhardt coming across the line, because according to our graphics, what is that, 0.006 of a second between those two? That's a really ridiculous finish. But Crab is going to finish out in 6th, rounding out that little 3-car fight. Michelle Lynn, who advised us not to mention her at the start of the broadcast, we did not. So as a result, she does not get struck by the commentators' issued falling anvil. She ends up finishing in 7th. Andrew Love in 8th. Casey Knight in 9th. Brian Stasinski go round to add your top 10. Sanchinelli, Thompson, Stasinski, Key, Spolman, Cathcart, Jason Grider finishing right behind John Casey. Jeffrey Filipkowski finishing in 19th. Russ Lundberg in 20th. Ryan Campbell, Joaquin Effinger, Andrew Wilsoncroft, Jacob Schilling, Wayne Buttermore, Joe Camilleri, Gary DePirio, and Gianni Mario, I believe. Gianni, we'll just call him Gianni, finishing this race in 28th and running at our 31 cars that took the start.
Yeah, let's see if we can't get a quick replay of that finish here, Ron.
I'll take a look at this. This has got to be a ridiculous finish. Oh, I have a fantastic feeling about this. Looking at that.
Wow, yep.
Oh, that was like an inch.
Yep, indistinguishable pretty much on the finish there, and I think Jim came out with it, so congrats, Jim. That's awesome. Another well-fought race there. It's back and forth with Michelle and a bunch of with Andrew, and end up coming out on top, so good job, man.
I think one driver who's going to be very happy about that finish is going to be Jim Brewster. We'll drag him into the commentary booth, have a quick little chat before we wrap things up from this Formula V race. Jim's certainly going to be fired up after a beautiful photo finish. And now, Jim, that looked like a fantastic finish and a fantastic race all in all. Talk us through it, man.
As you noticed, so we got broken up on a 4th or 5th lap. A couple people were doing the middle infield hairpin a little slow, and it bunched us up, and that's what got at the gap. And I don't know if you noticed, us faithful Formula Vers, me, Andrew, Michelle, and Casey was helping us. We did the perfect leapfrog, lap after lap after lap, and we were trying to catch up with, whichever was the weak antelope falling off the front pack. And then it changed, late, and we had the master come join us and help us out, and then help me out a little bit. So I have to appreciate his help. But yeah, we had the leapfrog, I think, pretty much down to a science. Lots of fun.
And the leap. Oh yeah, it was very fun from our perspective in the commentary booth. I'm sure from your perspective behind the wheel, it was incredible.
So you saw how we were, the fast guy was pulling out of the way for each other, each lap, and definitely a lot of cooperation. True Formula V cooperation. We're having a problem. I'm in the middle of qualifying now. We got our races a little too close together here, so I came directly over and just got into qualifying. So.
Oh, okay.
Tricky.
So that may be a slight issue for us. I say that right as I'm. That is our cue to say, Jim, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth. We'll no longer distract you in this qualifying session, and hope things go well for you in the Spec Racer Forwards. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining us. That right there is Jim Brewster, and as he just said, the Spec Racer Ford race about to get underway in just a couple of moments' time. So let's wrap things up here, move on to some commercial breaks, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Through dip 50, slowing crest 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short to 5.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, V&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and SimuCube, it can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. SimMotion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a SimMotion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for Sim Magic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we fuel your passion for sim racing.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to part 2 for Group 3 for round number 1 of this Group 3 season from the Ray Esports Club Racing League. Back with the Spec Racer Fords, that Formula V race was incredibly exciting from start to finish. This whole season really has been exciting thus far, from the Mazda and TCR action for Group 1, the GT4s that we saw 70 minutes of racing action from just 1 week ago, and here with Group 3, everything has been absolutely fantastic. And to have this fantastic racing, we've got to have fantastic partners as well, and we certainly got them in spades here, because today's broadcast of the Ray Esports Club Racing League on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you by SimMotion. SimMotion is a store by sim racers for sim racers, carrying everything from button boxes to steering wheels and the best brands from the sim racing world, including SimMagic, Moza, Husingveld, and many more. With decades of experience in the industry, SimMotion is a great choice for sim racers in both North America and Europe looking to upgrade their simulators. If you'd like to check out what SimMotion has to offer, go to us.sim-motion.com. That's us.sim-motion.com. SimMotion is not only the sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series here on iRacing, but is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, and feel free to use discount code RAY5 at checkout for some very nice discounts. And speaking of very nice stuff, Josh, it was very nice of Jim Brewster to mention the fact that qualifying was already underway for the Spec Racer Ford race by the time the Formula Vs were up and rolling for their Wreckfest at the end of that. Got some drivers who we saw in that race earlier on moving over to this one, but got some stalwarts that we usually see running Spec Racer Fords either in the past on the Ray Esports Racing League series or in the Weekend Warrior series. Charlie Vaccaro is a driver who we've seen run in here in the past. He's driving the number 221 car at the moment. Currently qualified in 13th, but it's Nicholas Rice-Puto currently leading this field at a 1 minute 27.527 on the pole in front of Rick Sagrini, currently slotted in P2. But looking like this qualifying session a bit more spread out than those Formula Vs earlier on, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. So this car is even more draft heavy than the V, obviously, it having basically shaped like a brick. It's got a really, really good canvas for paint jobs and stuff like that, but as far as aerodynamics, not really the most aerodynamic car in the world. It's not horrible, but it definitely cuts a pretty big block in the air if you're behind it and you can get up underneath the back of it, and we're going to see some just unbelievable drafting here in this thing today, I think. If you thought that was back and forth racing and that was a close finish, I think we're about to have an even more back and forth and probably even closer finish in this one. So these cars tend to be a little bit quicker. They have a little bit more power. They're a little bit grippier out there. They're a real blast to drive, honestly. The SRFs are one of my favorite cars, and it looks like at the end of qualifying here, we've got Resputo up in first place, Ron. So we'll get the grid up here shortly, and we can set up this next race here around Miami.
Yeah, this next race, which is certainly going to be a lot of fun. The Spec Racer Ford, such a draft-heavy race car. The Formula Vs, certainly no exception either, but I feel like the Formula Vs, despite being smaller, that was the main advantage they had over the Spec Racer Fords, because these things are just absolute draft monsters. But leading this field to green, a pole position, which really, if we're being completely honest, isn't going to mean too much. Nicholas Rice-Puto, though, is the one that grabs it in the number 13 car. Hoping that his number doesn't convert to any bad luck, he grabs the pole as going to be starting this race at the north end. Jordan Rick Sagrini going to be joining him on that front row with a qualifying time about 0.4 of a second slower than Rice-Puto. Gianni Morio starting this race in third in the number 8 car. Morgan Burkhardt going to be starting in fourth. Josh Justice off the back of a victory in the Formula V is going to be starting in fifth. John Vogel going to join him on that third row. Jameson Hoffman going to be starting this race in seventh. Next to Seth Spolman in 8th. Miles Crabb, who we've seen win in the past in this series in the Spec Racer Ford cars, he's going to be starting in 9th. Jim Brewster going to round out your top 10. Ryan Campbell at 11th. Matt Thompson in 12th. Pretty big field that we have for the Spec Racer Ford drivers, 28 cars strong. So we'll round out your top 14 by saying it rounds out with Charlie Vaccaro and Andrew Rosencroft. And there we go. That is the grid, lining ourselves up for what is going to be a hectic night of racing action. 30 minutes in front of us, Josh. Considering that you're a driver actively racing in the Spec Racing Forward Weekend Warrior Series, I feel like you can attest to how nuts these races can certainly get, especially at a draft-heavy racetrack like this one. But I think in terms of nuts racing, this is just about as crazy as it could possibly get. From turn 8 all the way through pretty much into turn number 2, these drivers are going to be spending a decent chunk of this lap flat out. We saw in the Formula V's it was about 45-ish seconds that they're spending bending the floor pans in those race cars. These Spec Racer Fords certainly going to be no different. I have a feeling, though, that we may see a bit more attrition than we saw in that Formula V race just because these cars are a little bit wider. Green flags that the drivers are on their way. Let the insanity begin. Heading down into turn number 1. Some drivers fanning out 3 wide, a little bit farther in the back. But it's going to be a side-by-side fight, a fight that is looking to be won by Nicholas Rice-Puto. He leads them heading down into turn number 3. Jordan Rick Sangri trying to get a move done around the outside. Currently on his inside, though, now switching to the outside line is going to be Moiro in that number 8 car. Burkhardt running in the 4th position as it stands at the moment, just off the back of a win in the Formula V's. He's running at your top 5 at the moment. Some drivers shuffling a little bit farther in the back. Look at some drivers trying to get some moves done. That Jameson Huffman, the number 89 car, and he is going to be not spinning. That is John Vogel, on the other hand, who will be spinning. That's another car spun around heading through turn number 6. Huffman very lucky to avoid a spin as a result of that light little bit of contact heading through turn number 6. But looking at Brewster trying to get a move done heading down into turn number 8, nearly coming up close with Miles Crabbe making a tiny bit of contact. I believe that was Campbell getting a little bit of a hip check from Brewster. Huffman breaking away from this fight, it seems like. Myro, who are following right now in the number 8 car, he's going to have a fantastic run. Look at that. We saw it in the Formula V's. Those runs were a little bit slower. In these Spec Racer Fords, though, those runs come thick and fast. Look at Burkhardt now trying to get really racy. They're going to be 3 wide, heading down that start-finish straightaway, nearly 3 wide, certainly 2 by 2. Look at the 8 and the 40 trying to wheel it on the outside. Meanwhile, you got some drivers battling all throughout this field. These races are so tricky to try and keep tabs on. Brewster running into the grass coming out turn number 1. That will send him off the circuit through 2. Very lucky, though, to avoid contact with himself and Miles Crabbe. I think there may have been a moment for Key. He spun off. He's running down in 22nd as it stands at the moment, dropping down the running order, though, so there may have been a moment for him. Murphy Nichols is also out of the race. Not sure what happened to him. He's currently slotted down in 25th. Only 1 lap on the board. So far, so clean. Knowing Malak, I probably just jinxed it.
Yeah, it's been pretty clean so far. I'm just realizing here that that opening mono I gave there did not have my mic unmuted, so I'm just going to reiterate again here. The key to this, I believe, is going to be making good decisions and just making sure that that draft works for you and keeping your car clean by the end of the race. So I do apologize for having my mic muted there for a minute at the beginning. Still getting used to some of these tools producing and commentating at the same time. But yeah, I think the key to this race is going to be keeping it clean out there. You do not want to rimple any part of this car. You want to keep it nice and clean and aerodynamic. And you want to make good decisions leading up to the end of the race here. It's going to be a little more frenetic, I think, than the race we just witnessed in the V's, just because these cars draft so amazingly, as you can see right now. Again, going in 2 wide into T1 here. Looks like you actually cleared them there. So just an amazingly powerful draft in the SRF. A blast of a car to drive.
Ooh. There was contact there between the 40 and the 8 heading into turn number 1. I think that may have sent Burkhardt off the track. He's careening his way down the running order. There he is, rejoining it, heading down into turn number 3. It looks like he's going to lose out on only a couple of spots, briefly lost out on spots to Jameson Huffman. However, Huffman got to get back past him, but Burkhardt having a big source of drama hang down into turn number 2. It was him, and I believe it's Mayuro. I believe that would be the correct pronunciation of the driver of the number 8 car. Either way, though, he had a big source of drama. Huffman went off the circuit as well, and sympathy for Burkhardt going off the track. You can see those two cars nearly banging doors, heading through turn number 3 and 4. It looks like they stay fairly line of stern. Here's a replay of Burkhardt. You can see, I'm not sure if there was contact between himself and Mayuro in that number 8 car, but either way, Burkhardt having a wild ride, hitting the gravel, hitting some jumps off the track as well. Looks like he's going to be rejoining a little bit farther in the back. However, it is not game over for him yet in the number 40 car. I mean, we still have a whole lot of time left to go in this race. Only 4 minutes on the clock thus far, and there's still a lot left to be decided. Mayuro is leading it over Jordan Ricks Sangrini running in the second position. I feel like that name pronunciation is always going to bite me. I apologize there, Jordan, but he's running now in third as Mayuro gets a move done on him, having a slight technical issue that I think we may have just gotten resolved, as that's an off-track moment for Ice Pudo heading through into turn number 2. He's going to drop down very, very briefly into third. Look at that, Justice nearly running into the back of Burkhardt, heading down into turn number 4. These drivers already breaking their elbows out, feeling really racy, and I know I said this right before we grabbed the green, Josh, about this race maybe being one a bit more of attrition compared to some of the ones we had earlier on, some of the action we've seen thus far, and some of the close calls we've seen thus far. I feel like that's definitely going to be ringing true.
Yeah, absolutely. These cars have a little more power. You know, I think a few updates ago, a while back now, they actually gave it a little more rubber too, so they have a bit more grip. That was real close. I believe that was Huffman. Was that Huffman that just outbraked himself hugely there into that corner, almost rear-ended? I don't believe it was Huffman actually, but that was a close one. But anyway, to get back to the point there, yeah, it is going to be a little more frenetic for sure, Ron. You're going to get a lot more drafting, a little bit more aggressive in this car. It's just got a little bit more power. It's a little bit more pointy in the front. And I think we're just going to see a lot more of that. So it's really going to be about keeping your car clean and not making moves like that one we just saw. Almost took out a couple cars there.
I have a feeling that if these drivers just misjudge a move ever so slightly, we may see a Spec Racer Ford round of bowling. But at the moment, Burkhardt bowling around the drivers at the front, moving back into the lead of this race, just setting his personal best as well that previous lap at a 128.6. So we'll see how these lap times continue to fall. That's the thing with these Spec Racer Ford races and the Formula Vs as well. Single car qualifying, so these drivers are on track all by their lonesome. So usually we're going to see the lap times in the race be far quicker than in the qualifying session, just because that draft is oh so powerful in these Spec Racer Ford cars. Burkhardt has some experience running an SRF machinery in real life, certainly trying to prove that, as we have an off-track moment for Perez in the 114.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened here, Ron. Just having a quick look. It looks like he did it all by himself here. So he's going to outbrake a little. Yeah, and just rear end looped around to the front. So nothing major there. And he joins back in with Buttermore. Should be able to finish the race, no problem. But once again, out front here, we are drafting and we are too wide. Looks like we got some people coming in here too. That's Huffman and Justice as well, that are going to be catching up to this pack pretty soon if Gianni and Resputo don't start playing ball with each other here.
I have a feeling, though, that these drivers, at some point in time, they're just going to say to hell with it, maybe go 3 wide, hang down into turn number 1. Beautiful time for me to say that. Burkhardt, Mayuro, and Rice Pudo giving us a fantastic fight. They're slowly pulling away from Justice and Huffman, who are now side by side, coming out of turn number 2 into 3. Justice going to lose out on 2 spots in the span of just 2 corners as Jordan Rick Sangrini gets a move done on him. I feel like I will have to issue out a formal apology to Jordan, because whenever I see his name, I think of Rick Sangria, so that may be some odd things going on in my head to be sure, but he's running a more hot under their collar. Going on here at the moment. We'll protect. Alrighty, everybody. Think we're having some slight technical issues here at the moment. We will pretend as if everything is perfectly alright. Our producer and colleague here, Mr. Joshua Wilkie, having a brief little technical issue. That's the thing with Canadian power infrastructure. That's a problem when you switch from nuclear power plants to maple syrup power plants. Oh boy, I feel like I'm going to get punted after this broadcast is said and done. Speaking of punted, these drivers are certainly giving each other a tiny bit of a punt, heading down the start-finish straightaway. The bump draft's proving to be a good strategy for these drivers in this Spec Racer Ford race, but it is a dangerous game, as Josh pointed out earlier on in this broadcast. Don't want to bump draft too hard. You may pick up a little bit of front end damage, have a slight tweak to the front end of these very much aero-sensitive Spec Racer Ford race cars, and that could be a fate worse than death. So these drivers at this point in time certainly trying to figure out what the deal is. But at this point in time, that would be looking at the YouTube chat, which we do keep our eyes on. I don't really mention it too often, but we do keep our eyes on the other chat. So I see you out there, Guido Marzuki, a staple of the Formula V series. Michelle out there, who I did not commentator's jinx for that Formula V race. Tam in the chat as well, Russell Tucker, and hopefully me just blabbering off to myself was maybe on the air, maybe not on the air. It's a good thing I didn't say anything that cannot be said whilst we're on the air here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Always nice to keep tabs on that. And I'm in slow descent into absolute madness, which I feel like Josh can attest to, having heard me on the air for hundreds, if not coming up to thousands of hours at this point. God have mercy on his soul. But looking at this pack, with Justice running in the 5th position at the moment, Rick Sangrini running right behind in 6th. I will eventually get the hang of things in terms of pronouncing his name. He's running right behind in P6. Miles Crab in 7th. The fight going on, though, involving Huffman and Rice Puto trading blows like a bunch of MMA fighters, heading through turns number 3 and 4 right now. Still side by side. Looks like Huffman is going to prevail in that fight for the final podium position, but they have lost out on a little bit of time to the pack of Burkhardt and Mayuro right in front. So that may be something that we
are
have
back
to
up.
see between now and the end of this race. Earth to Josh.
We are back up. I apologize, everyone there.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's a good thing I have a UPS
I can take
connected
a
to my
sip of
computer. I just lost power, and I was able to get it back up because I have a UPS here that kept everything going. So everything kept running, but I lost my monitors and I lost audio and lost everything that I had to boot back up, and we are back racing again. So let's get right back into it here with Morgan Burkhardt out front, and still going too wide into T1 every lap here on.
Yeah, I mean, they are still battling just about as hard as they possibly can. Gotta say, Burkhardt now running up towards the wall, cutting back to that inside line. We saw some odd lines being used in the past here in the Ray Esports world with these Spec Racer Ford races at Homestead. Running some odd lines heading through 3 and 4 on the oval, 9 and 10 on this road course. on the final laps, running some odd lines, trying to break up that draft a little bit and have a really good run coming to take the checkered flag. But I think a pack that's having a very good run is this Fight of Justice. Rick Sangrini and Crab, they're slowly but surely reeling them in. You can see this absolute hornet's nest of Spec Racer Ford race cars. Mayuro is still leading it. Burkhardt right behind in second. Those two drivers nearly coming to blows heading out of turn number 4, though. I mean, at this point, there's just so much left to be run in this race, despite the fact that we are slowly but surely approaching that halfway mark. Now only about 15 seconds left to go until we hit the halfway mark in this race. There's still so much that can happen. I mean, think of how the field looked in the Formula V race earlier on halfway through compared to how it was at the checkered flag. Oh boy, here's a quick lesson to you broadcasters out there. Swallow before you speak. That's the first time that has happened on the air for me in quite some time. But as the point that I was going to make before my vocal cords decided to protest against me deciding to talk was the fact that, I mean, this pack that we see right now at the front of the Spec Racer Ford race, it could be completely turned on its head by the end. We could see Miles Crab end up in the catch fence. We could see Josh Justice leave the track and go into downtown Miami to get himself a nice Cuban sandwich. We could see a whole lot happen between now and the end of this race. One driver who I'm certainly seeing something odd of is Jameson Huffman with a little bit of front end damage. I'm not sure if you're seeing that as well, Josh. I see a little bit of a scuff on the front of that 89 car.
Yeah, that looks like, you know, again, it could just be a little bump from the guy, you know, bumping the guy in front of you. These cars, every once in a while, they do kind of have a bit of a glitchy sort of a damage system there where you can get a little tap and get a bunch of damage, or a big one and get almost nothing, or the clip just pops back on. I've definitely also had damage just by striking a curb too hard in these as well. If you really whack a curb, you can actually bend that front end up as well. And unfortunately on this car, one of the worst pieces of damages you can get is any damage to the front end at all. Is just destroys your race unless you can keep up behind someone for the entire race here, like we see Morgan Burkhardt right up under the back of Marino here.
Yeah, you could see they're bump drafting even through turn number 1. That's absolute insanity. Burkhardt running wide, though, coming out of turn number 2. That's going to be the opportunity for Royce Puder trying to get a move done. Side-to-side contact coming through turn number 3. Burkhardt going to hold on to that second place spot for now. But look at Jameson Huffman. He may try and get a move done here in the not-too-distant future. And with that small little bit of battling, Mayuro slowly pulling that gap between himself and the two right behind. Rice Pudo getting the move done into turn number 6, but it's not over yet. Burkhardt on that inside line through 7 has a good exit. It's going to be a battle as late breakers, drag race, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's going to turn out to be. Heading down into turn number 8. They don't want to battle too hard, though, because Mayuro, he would certainly love it if these two would just spend the entirety of that middle sector, that infield section, side by side, because he'd be able to pull out a gap and just start driving off into the distance. I feel like, though, Josh, what sort of gap would be insurmountable in this field? I genuinely don't think there would be. It'd have to be like a 2-second gap for a leader to have, for them to not be a sitting duck on the start-finish straightaway. It was half a second for Mayuro, and look at Rice Pudo, Burkhardt, and Huffman slowly reeling him in. Huffman giving a bump draft to Burkhardt. They're going to be powering past the duo on that inside line, getting in front of them comfortably, heading down off the banking into the infield through turn number 1 and 2. Burkhardt now back in the lead of this race. Huffman, though, with more damage on the front end of that race car. He's playing a dangerous game in the 89 car. I even think now the wheels are starting to stick out a little bit. So that 89 car, if he's leading this pack, he's going to be just an absolute sitting duck.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. That's not where you want to be. If with a little bit of damage on the front like that, you definitely want to be right up underneath someone else so you can kind of make up for that damage that you've got right there. And you can see it's definitely getting a little more racy up at the front now. So it looks like I think Morgan's going to be wanting to try to pull away here. He's going to maybe feign that he's got the speed. I really don't think you want to be in first place to win this race coming around that last corner onto the banking. That's not how you're going to win this one. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how he plays this chess game out and ends up in a position to hopefully nab a win, or who's going to play this chess game correctly to find out who's actually going to get this win here. But as you can see, the draft is just so powerful in these cars. You're right, Ron, that you can catch a draft, especially if there's a block of cars in front of you like this and you're behind it. You can actually catch some of that draft from probably almost 2 seconds behind. If not, the rule is usually around a second or so. Once you get in within about a second of these cars, it just starts teleporting you into the back of the other car almost. You get so much more speed. They're so square and cut through the air so much in the back. So we should definitely see a whole bunch more of that up and down the field here as well. We go back to Vaccaro and Sincelli are still battling over the same thing. It's just back and forth and back and forth. You have a little bit more in the infield for someone, they're just going to catch up to you on the straightaway and get it all back for the infield again. So definitely a chess game out there.
It would seem as if teleportation only exists in the form of race cars that look a lot like a doorstop. But, you know, I mean, Spec Racer Fords have their own unique flair. I mean, the racing is absolutely fantastic, though, so you certainly can't knock that at all. And, Josh, you bring up a really good comparison. These races, really draft-heavy races, period, whether it be in the form of the Spec Racer Fords or the Formula Vs, it is a game of chess, for sure. It's a game of, you're playing chess with an assassin trying to kill you. That's the thing when it comes to trying to decide who's going to be in the draft, who isn't going to be in the draft towards the end of this race. Now with less than 10 minutes to go in this 30-minute long affair for this first Spec Racer Ford race of this Group 3 season, the drivers are breaking their elbows at 3. Are they going to try and make it 4 wide? Heading down that start-finish straightaway. It's going to be Huffman leading it, but with that damage on the front end of that number 89 car, he's going to be a sitting duck. And look at that, the dive down into the infield from Mayoro. He's going to try and get it done to take the lead of this race. Rice Pudo going to follow in second. Huffman in third. Jordan Rick Sangrini running in the fourth position as it stands at the moment. And Burkhardt slipping down to fifth. But at this point in time, it's... Usually you'd think in the world of iRacing that the licenses are the big thing that decide how these racers do. Gotta say, the front three at the moment all have C-Class road racing licenses, so, I mean, a lot of them are real-life drivers. Look at Rice Pudo and Huffman, not entirely sure about Mayura. I believe he may be a driver in real life. I may have to fact-check myself on that between now and the end of this broadcast. But Rice Pudo and Huffman certainly are, and they are still very fast in the world of iRacing. They've proved it thus far in this race. Huffman is a previous winner in the Ray Esports Racing League, so he is a very fast driver. So with that number 89 car, despite the fact that it has a little bit of damage, we may still see him in contention for the win when the checkered flag comes out in this race. You just never know. But at the moment, this 5-car fight still covered by barely any air. 5 cars separated by about 6/10 of a second. That gap certainly decreasing. Those are back onto the high banks through this flat-out blast at the end of the lap. Huffman going to try and get that move done to retake the lead of this race. Mayor and Rice Pudo working together. I think Burkhardt and Huffman are going to be the shake and bake dream team that try and steal the victory in this race. But look at Burkhardt. That was a dive from a lifetime. That was a beautiful camera angle. Thank you very much for that, Josh. Huffman just... he felt like an absolute sitting duck compared to Burkhardt swooping around the outside. Looked like he was going Mach 5 in the number 40 car to take the lead of this race. Shows you how powerful the draft is in these SRFs.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool shot there for sure. You can kind of see the disparity in speed there on the brakes, and then the two cars just sent it up either side of him there and around him to take those 2 positions back. So we definitely have a bit of aggressiveness going on out there. It does seemingly at the moment, Morgan wants to be out front, which is kind of surprising me a little bit. I'm not sure if that's just a game he's kind of feigning. I want to be out front, and then have a little mistake and end up being a little farther back near the end. But we'll see how it goes here. But so far, yeah, it seems to be shaking out pretty good. Just to explain again there, I think maybe I was still having some audio issues earlier there. We do apologize. I actually lost power to my room there quickly, and if it wasn't for my UPS, we'd have been shut down completely here. So I got it back up. Everything seems to be working good now, and we are racing. So we do apologize for a bit of some technical issues that we've had during this one, but it looks like we're all settled now, and the racing is on.
I gotta say, though, we have a very nice and sympathetic crowd. Technical issues never ideal in the slightest, especially in the world of broadcasting. I gotta say, though, Josh, the people in the YouTube chat really like it, because whenever you've been talking and your microphone has been off, they have been letting us know about that, which I think is a very good luxury. I'm sure the other people in the YouTube chat would very much like it if my microphone was turned off permanently, but nevertheless,
I doubt that.
Looking at these drivers battling in the top 5, really it's turning into more of a top 7 fight as Josh Justice in that 7th position has slowly reeled in these drivers. Miles Crab now starting to battle hard with Rick Sangrini. That may be a fight that we have to keep our eyes on between now and the end of this race. The track limits, though, getting violated coming at turn number 6. That was Rice Pudo running off into the dirt coming out of the corner. Burkhardt and Mayoro also getting very flirtatious with that outside curb. The track limits, we haven't really talked about it all throughout this race, but that may be a factor come time for the end of this race. Certainly different from a track like Daytona, for instance, where you are just pretty much entirely a sitting duck, especially if you pick up a slowdown heading through the bus stop chicane or the Le Mans chicane or whatever they call it at the end of the Daytona Roval. Unlike that, there's not really too much of an opportunity to pick up a slowdown coming out of turn number 8 around this racetrack. However, if you do pick up a slowdown, that would be the worst section to serve it in the world, considering how long these drivers spent flat out towards the end of this lap. But coming towards the end of this race, less than 5 minutes on the clock, Burkhardt is leading it. The real question is he going to be the leader of this race in 5 laps time? He's a fast driver, very fast. He's an IMSA racer for a very good reason. But I don't know, Josh. I feel like leading, especially on the final lap, especially coming out of turn number 8 on that final lap, it's a real tough task.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were talking about it earlier, especially being out front like this. Like, he's got a pretty big train of cars behind him now, and any one of these cars could end up winning the race. Especially, you know, we've seen some of these things just end up fireworks in the last lap or two, and somebody makes a mistake or goes a little wide or what have you and ends up with some damage or pushes somebody off. But I think really where you want to be is probably somewhere around where Jamison is, maybe even where Jordan is, maybe even where Miles Crab is, Ron. You might even be able to get a draft from that far back around here. And I think they know that as well. So it really should be interesting again to see how this chess game is going to play out near the end of this race and just exactly how you're going to use that draft to your advantage.
The draft chess game. I think that's the best way that we can coin either these Spec Racer Ford races or the Formula V races. I think may have to introduce like a point system for every single time that we mention the game of chess or the game of drafting chess in these Group 3 races. 7 races with this season, 7 rounds of this season, 14 races. Got one down. We're in the midst of the second. 3 wide, 5 cars covered by nothing. Heading down that start-finish straightaway into turn number 1. Burkhardt still holding on to the lead. Huffman and Mayoro side by side. Rick Sangrini and Rice Pudo battling for the 4th position. Looking at Crab in that 131 car, following the number 13 of Rice Pudo right in front of him. This race has just been absolutely fantastic from start to finish. I think the fun is still far from over. Less than 3 minutes on the clock. I think if I had to do the math in my head, we probably have about 2 or 3 laps left. The real question is, who is going to be victorious? Gotta say, though, Josh, looking at some of these racers, mainly as we were looking at that camera shot from Jameson Huffman, looking back to Mayoro's race car, Huffman and Mayoro have a pretty significant amount of front-end damage on their race car. Burkhardt's got some scuffing along the left-hand side, left or right-hand side, you can tell I'm dyslexic with that comment. But these cars have some damage on them. Look at Mayoro. That's some pretty hefty damage on the front of that 8 car, so I don't know why. I mean, the damage, the aero sensitivity in these race cars. Josh, you coined it earlier. They're basically a flying brick. Not a lot of aerodynamics in terms of downforce, but a whole lot of aerodynamics in terms of being slippery through the air down these flat-out blasts. Something like that. That's going to be a real tough. That's going to be a real tough task and a real tough mountain to try and overcome and climb. I think that could be part of the reason why Burkhardt is slowly but surely pulling away.
Yeah, I think you might be right here. We had a little bit of a bump and run there as well from, I believe it was Gianni there, made a pretty good pass, and it almost looks like Morgan, he had escape velocity there, and they were not able to actually catch up to him down the straightaway. So if he can keep that going here for maybe one more lap or so, and they keep squabbling behind him like this, he might actually be able to come away with this, which would be quite the task, to be honest, to be able to pull away from a pack of SRFs at this track. You know, is a bit of a feat to be done here, so I'm going to be pretty surprised if he can actually do it. I think Gianni's probably going to bring himself back into the fight, and therefore everybody else as well here by the time we get near the end. But even just for him to be able to pull a whole lap and have the escape velocity to pull away from him like that is pretty impressive. So they're really going to have to kind of get their stuff together in the back here and see if they can't work together a bit more and get back up to the front here so that they do have a chance at the end of this race.
It is going to be a close call, but I believe they are going to be taking the white flag this time by only one more lap of racing action. And after this, it's going to be 12 corners left for these drivers to try and challenge Burkhardt, a real-life Spec Racer 4 driver. You may know him as a driver of the IMSA Michelin Pilot Series, but he is fast in the sim as well. However, he's got a fight on his hands with Mayora, despite the fact there's some significant damage on that race car. He's not going down without a fight. He took the white flag. The real thing is he going to take the checkered? Burkhardt heading down into turn number 2, running in P number 2. Mayora, though, he's going to have that damaged race car punching the hole in the air. Royce Puto trying to get a move done on Burkhardt, trying to get that 2-for-1 deal on both himself and Mayora. Will it be successful, or is it going to be a tough task? Burkhardt getting shuffled out. Look at Rick Sangrini involved in that. 3 wide, heading down into turn number 6 for the final time in this race. Look at that. That is insane. 6 cars covered by nothing. That is insane. But Rick Sangrini on that inside line, he is going to be leading them coming out of turn number 7, but he's going to be in a real tough position if he's leading them coming out of turn number 8. Nicholas Royce Puto and Huffman, on the other hand, they're starting a battle. Gotta wonder about Mayoro and Burkhardt and Crab as well. Crab, he's going to have the biggest draft advantage of anybody. These are the drivers I'm keeping my eyes on. Nearly bump drafting and nearly coming to blows are Crab and Burkhardt. This is going to be a drag race to end all drag races. Any of these drivers can win it. They're coming to the checkered flag. They're not going to be lifting. They're not going to be hitting the brakes. They're not even going to be thinking about breathing on that brake pedal. They're going to be bending the floor pan in these race cars. Who's going to win it, though? Is it going to be Jordan Rick Sangrini? Is it going to be Huffman, though, in that number 89 car? Look at Burkhardt with a final challenge. Burkhardt going to win it in the number 40 car with a late challenge, making contact with Miles Crab after the checkered flag. Burkhardt coming back in a comeback of a lifetime to win it when everything is said and done. Look at another side-by-side fight developing here with Ryan Cameron and Brad Cathcart. The Aussie and the American side-by-side coming to line with a bump from the back of Thompson. It was nearly going to be Ryan Campbell, but it looks like Brad Cathcart got the upper hand. Burkhardt, though, he timed that to absolute perfection. 1/100th of a second between himself and Jameson Huffman. Holy macaroni.
Yeah, unbelievable finish. You can see them just jockeying for position. They're trying to find a way to get that draft and get their nose in the fight here. And Morgan Burkhardt around the outside with that just amazing drag there. He had a little bit more momentum than everybody else and just took it at the end. So what we were talking about chess games being played and who's going to play it the best. Well, we know now for sure. Let's see if we can get an onboard with him here. See him just digging into that draft down here. Perfectly executed. Little wobble on the inside. Things got a little unsure for a few of the drivers, and boom. He just bullet billed his way straight through it. So totally amazing there for Morgan, and what a great finish all the way down the field. Really, that was just a fantastic race.
Yeah, that was a brilliant race. My vocal cord's not a big fan of it, but I certainly am. That was just absolutely incredible. The sort of action that you always come to expect from Spec Racer Ford Racing. That finish towards the end, though, that was absolutely insane. Look at the comeback from Huffman as well. He was banging doors coming to the line. My God, we're kind of paid to run our mouths about these races, but there comes a certain point in time where really just the racing speaks for itself. And that finish just spoke for itself and then some. That was insane from start to finish. I feel like predicting who is going to win that race. I mean, I mentioned earlier pinning the tail of the donkey when the donkey is on the other side of the equator. I mean, was the donkey on the International Space Station for that race? That race was so hard to try and predict. I mean, those Spec Racer Ford cars just put on some great races. Regardless of where it is, Homestead, Miami, certainly a brilliant venue for these race cars. I feel like we need to run here. I mean, Stevie, I know that Stevie is possibly tuning in to this broadcast. I gotta say, Stevie, and I know it may not be entirely your decision. I think it may be down to the whims of iRacing and the way they pick the upcoming Spec Racer Ford official season for season 1 of 2025. But I think Homestead needs to make an appearance just about as many times as possible in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, because as we just saw from this race, I mean, what is there to be said? Let's take a look at another replay of this finish in slow motion. Fitting to do it here on slow motion broadcasting. They fanned out to 3 wide. Burkhardt yanks that wheel over to the right, makes it 4 wide. 5 wide coming to the line. I guess at that point, hang on, no. If you kind of counted Rice Pudo in that number 13 car, wasn't really too involved in that, got shuffled back to 6th when everything was said and done. But if you count him as well, they're technically 6 wide coming to the line. But either way, 5 wide, that is... My God, Josh, genuinely, I don't think there's any other words to describe that finish.
That's honestly rare.
Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. We've covered these, for a few seasons now, and it's only, very rarely does it ever come down to 5 wide and by thousandths of a second there between 3 or 4 different cars. So, I mean, it's something maybe we could have predicted around here with these Rovals in the run-up as we were speaking. They do seem to kind of promote this kind of racing and drafting and sort of waiting till the last lap to really show all of your cards and so on. And it provides for some pretty cool racing and a really, really exciting broadcast, and sometimes for some serious fireworks near the end. What I'm really happy seeing here is just that we didn't see a bunch of people just crash in the last lap and, 3 corners from the end trying to jockey for that position, or we didn't see anybody sandbag it and let off the gas. Everybody went balls to the wall till the end, and Morgan came out on top, and that's what we want to see in these kind of races. So it looks like they had a blast out there. Great race for us to watch. Totally awesome run. Love calling this one.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm with you there, Josh. That race was brilliant from start to finish. Race which is won by Morgan Burkhardt. I think we'll get those results loaded up in just a couple of moments. I've got a lot of drivers waiting in the interview waiting area, looking to have a chat. That or looking to try and put some duct tape over my mouth. Either way, Morgan Burkhardt victorious when everything is said and done. 15 thousandths of a second between himself and Jameson Huffman in P2. Then you have to go back only... I'm trying to do the math in my head. Don't fail me now, public school education. 13 thousandths of a second farther back to Gianni Maioro in P3. Miles Crabb finishes in 4th. Jordan Rick Sangrini finishes in 5th. Nicholas Rice Pudo ends up in 6th. 1/10 behind the winner of Burkhardt. That shows, it's just the gaps between those two. It speaks for itself. Josh Justice ends up in 7th. Jim Brewster going to finish in 8th. Brad Cathcart in 9th. Ryan Campbell, the number 17 car, going to round out your top 10. Matt Thompson finishes in 11th. Edgar Sancinelli finishes this race in 12th. Seth Spolman in 13th. John Vogel in 14th. Charlie Vaccaro going to finish in P15. Tom Wendt in 16th. David Perez in 17th. Jason Grider going to finish down in 18th. And looking through some of the final drivers that have classified in this race, we have Paul Ellis in 19th. Mike Key running at your top 20. Wayne Buttermore 21st. Joaquin Effinger in 22nd. Andrew Wilsoncroft in 23rd. John A. Casey in 24th. Jacob Schilling in 25th. Murphy Nichols in 26th. Joe Camilleri in 27th. And Russ Lundberg going to round out your 28 cars that were classified from a very hectic Spec Racer Ford race. This Group 3 action is going to be brilliant to follow all throughout this season. We'll go through the calendar once we're done with some interviews, and I'm trying to figure out... I think, Josh, I will let you pick who would you like to have a chat with first, because we got a lot of options up there in the interview waiting area.
Well, we are looking a little packed in the interview area here, are we not? You know what? I think I will take the winner, Morgan Burkhardt, right off the bat here, and let's see how we got to that finish. We will pull up Morgan into the interview room here. Actually, would you like to do that for me there, Ron? I got my hands pretty full at the moment.
It is quite all right. I will drag him in here. Gotta say, he is live streaming something in the interview waiting area to some of the other people that are in there, so this may be a little bit of a rude awakening for him, but I will drop him in here in 3, 2, 1, and Josh, it is all yours.
Morgan, how's it going out there today? Great race from you. Won by, man, just a hair there at the end. You looked like you had an amazing run. Were you planning that the whole race there out front? It looked like for a bit you were trying to kind of pull a gap to everybody and see if you could get that gap. Was that just feigning that and waiting to kind of get behind everybody again to get the draft? Or explain how you played chess there.
Well, I saw pretty early on that if you were second, you weren't going to be leading at the line. If you were second coming out of the hairpin, you weren't going to be leading at the line. If you were first coming out of the hairpin, you definitely weren't going to be leading at the line. So it was a bit of a roll of the dice, really, to figure out where you wanted to be coming out of the final corner. And I got a little bit of a gap towards the ending stages of that race. I didn't really think that I was going to be able to run away with it, but I was like, you know what? I got a second. We'll just see what happens. And then I made it up to 1.3 seconds. And then coming out of the hairpin, I just watched the time tick down. It was like 4/10 by the time he crossed the line. So kind of put that one in the back pocket, that the speed differential is ridiculous with a push and with a draft. So going into the last lap, let Gianni kind of go, and then we all just slowed up because nobody wanted to be in the front of the pack. And then eventually somebody ended up biting the bullet and taking it. I think it was Jordan ended up biting the bullet and taking that. And then I wanted to put myself at the back of the pack going into the hairpin because I knew that I didn't want to push anybody, and I wanted to kind of make my own lane and read what the pack was doing in front. So I put myself at the back of the pack, got a really good run. Miles ended up pushing me, which was super helpful, and just delayed my run, ran a little bit like a lane up from everybody else on the banking so that I was traveling a little bit faster speed, but it's more distance, so I'm not catching them. Delaying that run, and then as soon as we're coming off the banking, pop back into the draft, and then use the run to full advantage, and that ended up working out.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of what we were expecting there as well. If you're out front on this track, you're very, very low percentage that you're going to end up being first coming across the line, and it looks like you just executed that draft perfectly, and it came together just exactly when you needed it to there. So great drive today, Morgan. Is there anybody you'd like to thank out there?
I'd just like to thank everybody else that we were racing with. I mean, that was honestly one of the most fun races I think I've ever had. I mean, Nicholas, Miles, Jameson, Gianni, Josh, Jordan, everybody out there it was so much fun. And we got a nice place here with Stevie to put us on and go out and play every week. It's really awesome. I haven't been able to do a lot of these races, but for once I've gotten enough time to sit down and run one of these. So just big thanks to everybody involved.
Excellent. Right on. Well, we're glad to have you, Morgan. Will you be showing up for the next couple races here? I know we've got a few different classes and everything else. Are you going to be doing just SRFs and stuff this year? You'll be joining us for some Miatas and some FVs and stuff as well.
We hope to join for all of them, but we'll see how the schedule plays out. But hoping to be here again next.
Excellent, man. Well, good luck with everything you do there in the real world and in sim racing, and good win today, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
And that right there was Morgan Burkhardt, a man with a schedule so hectic he puts Josh and I's to shame. But we got a little bit more time to have a chat with another driver, and I think the driver that I will bring in to have a chat with is going to be Jameson Huffman, who's now joining us in the commentary. But now, Jameson, that finish in this Spec Racer 4, I mean, the whole race just looked insane, but that finish, I'm still struggling to try and string together the words to describe it. Could you describe it for us? I mean, your perspective as a driver was a bit more in-depth than our position here in the commentary booth. So just talk us through it from your end.
Honestly, it was pretty crazy. All I really knew coming to the line is I didn't want to be first or second starting that back straight. And I thought third or fourth was going to be the sweet spot, but I got a little bit too good of a run coming out of the final corner and was just kind of banking on Gianni pushing me to the win. And I saw Morgan in my rear view when we were like halfway up the banking, and I was like, okay, it's fighting for second now because he's probably going to get a run and pass us. But I thought I was in a good spot. Turned out to be second best spot, but still really happy.
I gotta say, second place, considering the drag race at the end of this race was, considering the little bit of front end damage you had throughout most of that, still has to feel pretty sweet Can you talk us through the difficulties of trying to race with a somewhat battered and broken Spec Racer Ford car in a race like this, which is so draft heavy?
Honestly, I don't really think it slowed down that much. I know these cars, if you bump draft a little too hard, they'll look like they'll get damaged and the front's all beaten and bruised and missing paint, but I don't really think it slows down that much, especially this heavy of a draft track, that there's pretty much no air at that point already getting on it. So maybe a 10th, I think at most, really, when you're running that tightly packed, but it didn't feel any different to me.
I will say, though, you may have to thank some of the iRacing mechanics. I'll probably get those dents hammered out come time for the second race for Group 3, which is going to be at Sebring in about a month's time. That's going to be a really fun race. What are your thoughts heading into it?
Honestly, I don't know if I'll run that, to be frank. Sebring and me do not mix that well. I've never really liked that track, so I try to stay away from it as much as I can, so...
I'll have to pull up the schedule and see if there are some tracks that you may be a fan of. I know you used to rip it here when it was a Esports Racing League on Tuesday nights, and really excited to see you here on the racetrack for these Wednesday night races now. But considering that you had a really good race, I'll let you have the floor before we wrap things up and say, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
I want to give a thanks to my parents, as always. They're the whole reason I'm here right now and doing racing as a hobby. And you guys for putting on the show, and Stevie for putting on a wonderful league, and everybody that's been running it.
I want to say thanks to you drivers out there on the racetrack for giving us one heck of a fight to follow all throughout both the Spec Racer Ford race and that Formula V race as well. It's second, but it was second by a whisker, man. You still gave us one hell of a finish to talk about. So Jameson Huffman, well done on that result. I'm excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And that right there was Jameson Huffman, who finishes this race in P2. And, I mean, Josh, do you think we have enough time for one more interview? And if so,
sure, we can do one more.
Let you have the I'll let you have the picks to see who would you like to have a chat with next.
Yeah, let's get Joshua Justice in here so we can have a talk with him about that race from the previous race there too. I don't think we had a chance to congratulate him. Joshua, how's it going, man? Had a great first race there. We kind of missed you on the interview there. It was a real close finish. You pulled out in the first one, and then unfortunately couldn't quite get the draft and everything there in that huge pack in this one. But another pretty good result for you. Let's tell us how you got there today.
Yeah, so in this way, basically I had the pace, but I think I got my front tire 2 months when I had my on lap 12 or whatever it was. I thought I was clear going into turn 1, and I was, but I had to buck the brake, and then I wasn't clear anymore. And I had this big sideways moment through turn 1, and I was lucky to save it and not end up in the grass. So I just kind of hung on the back, but eventually what happened was I couldn't hang on anymore. Yeah, it was just understeer and, not being able to keep up coming out of the hairpin. But, I'm not gonna let that get me down because the Formula V race was so good, man. It was like a total game of shit entirely. It was just NASCAR Talladega, except we were taking a break going single file through the infield. And that was basically how it went. And it was just like, I think lap 3 was the first time I led a lap. And then we got to lap 8 and I led 3 laps. And I'm thinking, okay, I can lead the most laps at this point. And so I was just like constantly, every lap, I was just intentionally letting myself get past in turn 1 and 2 by taking the outside, then taking the lead on the outside, and then just lifting real early. And so some laps I wound up getting the lead, some laps I didn't. But I was just kind of every couple of laps, I was just getting the lead successfully, trying something different, see what worked. And then Morgan slid out and dropped out of the pack. We had a 4-car pack. And I don't know what happened to Miles. Miles dropped out of the pack. And then we had a 3-car pack. And then everything changed because with the 3-car pack, the rules for what you have to do to take the lead are different now. And so we had I want to say 10 laps with the 3-car pack. and I just kept trying different things with Queer, and I think it was Nicholas behind me and Queer in front of me, and Nicholas clearly decided his strategy was going to be to sit in third the whole time. That was pure strategy on his part, because I could tell he wasn't slingshotting up to me in turn 4. He was just hanging back, or over turn 4, I mean. So, Queer, well, I figured out I could pretty much always have Queer if I got to 100 miles an hour in the oval. It didn't matter how I did it. It didn't matter if I was on the left or the right, the inside, the outside. None of that matters. All that matters is if you're in first place, you get to 95, 96 miles an hour. If you're in second or third with a draft, you can get to 100. And if you get to 100, you get to the line first. Doesn't matter how high or low on the track you are. You're just 5 miles an hour faster, you get in the line first. And that's pretty much what I figured out. And so the last lap, I was just hanging back just enough that I was able to get that run, and I was just worried about the car behind me in third. Well, he went to the inside of me, and I just boxed him in behind Queer. And so he was no longer a threat, and I actually didn't get to 100 miles an hour, so I was pretty worried Queer was going to get back past me with the other car behind him. But he never did. I got 99 and I just barely beat him to the line. It was just a heck of a race, man.
Yeah, it absolutely was there. We were noticing on the race too just how sort of the dynamic changes a bit when all of a sudden there's not just one car in the middle, but there's 2 cars in the middle, and it sort of changes how you're gonna, where you're gonna go and what kind of chess game you're gonna play. But it looks like you came out on top there, and you were definitely in the car thinking about it. So thanks for the insight there, Josh. Is there anybody you'd like to thank for today?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the guy, my driven real Formula B. I've rented them from Bigger Hammer Racing down in Texas. So anybody interested in renting like vintage Formula B, you're in the area, send Bill an email, tell him I sent you. And you know, he got cars for rental for the driving pool down there for the vintage drivers. And it's a great experience. Driving a real Formula B, even if you drive something else normally, it will make you a better driver because you have no horsepower, so you're getting faster all the time by taking the corner back. So you do not have horsepower. The truck, it makes you a better driver, and you can also with open wheel, so you can see what the front tires are going. And obviously you shouldn't like steer your front tire while you're driving, especially in a race. But in the practice session, you know, you hit the brake and lock up the front tire, you can see that. You have the front tire bouncing and wheel hop, see the wheel hop happening. And it makes you a better driver because it gives you something that connects what you're feeling in the seat and in your hand with the steering wheel to what the tires are actually doing. And you'll be able to see that and go, oh, that wheel hop. That's what wheel hop feels like. And it's just a great experience that makes you a better driver, and I fully recommend it to anyone regardless of what car they drive.
Yeah, that sounds excellent for sure. Totally agree there. Yeah, you're definitely going to be able to see what's going on, and it doesn't really matter if the car has a bunch of power. You're probably going to find some more finesse that way through a V anyway. So great. Yeah, that sounds like a great experience there, Josh, and we thank you for your time here. We will catch you next week, man, and great win on the first race there, and good result on the second one as well, and some kind of some tough conditions there. So we'll talk to you again next week, Josh. Take care.
Yep. All right, see ya.
And that right there was Joshua Justice, the winner in the Formula V race, and a driver who certainly gave us a lot to talk about in the Spec Racer Ford race. Right after that, Group 3 action to kick this season off has been absolutely phenomenal. And hey folks, we still got 6 more rounds after it. On December the 11th, we're going to be having the action at Sebring, Summit Point, Willow Springs, Road Atlanta, VIR, Mid-Ohio going to comprise the rest of this season, running from now all the way through until April the 9th. But in terms of the upcoming stuff that we have here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, we have got the action just absolutely in spades The Weekend Warrior Series is always incredibly exciting. The Formula Vs are going to be running at Lime Rock Park on that classic layout this upcoming Saturday. That will be one of the final races of that season. That's going to be a really good race to follow as well. Formula Ford's going to be running at Suzuka. The Formula Ford Weekend Warrior Series, always quite exciting. The championship leader in the Spec 1 category is not going to be present for that race, so that's going to be a real wrench thrown in the works when it comes to talking about championship contention there. Spec Racer Fords, meanwhile, also going to be running in Japan at Tsukuba that same day later on that afternoon. The Ray Esports Club Racing League is going to continue round number 2 for group number 1 with the Miatas and the TCRs running at Bathurst Mount Panorama on Wednesday, November the 20th. That's going to be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be some really good racing. The same can also be said about one of the final races of the Formula V Weekend Warrior season at Lebanon, upcoming on Saturday, November the 23rd. That's just about all the stuff coming up here on SMB. Josh, looking a little bit into the rearview mirror about what was an incredible night of racing action filled with twists and turns, literally and metaphorically speaking. That was just about as exciting as a night of racing action can get. What are your final thoughts before we wrap things up? And I gotta say, I'm with you there, Josh. This series has been fantastic to cover thus far, and hey, we are only 3 rounds in, 1 round for each of the 3 groups. This is a fantastic series, and it's going to be a fantastic season of racing action that we have look forward to, all of course being broadcasted here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And hey, with all the stuff that we went through about all the stuff coming up, if that doesn't give you a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well here to SMB, I really don't know what would. The racing tonight was phenomenal. The action was incredible from start to finish, and we had 2 fantastic photo finishes to boot. But I think for tonight's action, and for the sake of both of our vocal cords, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie joining me working the comms and the cams on today's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
We welcome you all to Slow Motion for this presentation of the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow, and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
We are live for the first time on Slow Motion Broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
With these three going right at it, we see you're getting really, really squirrely. There.
Oh, no!
Some contact. Oh, no. Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there, heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal. Catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.
The field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green and is pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure green has his hands full coming into T1.
York's chance. Did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside. Hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Plava going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland!
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, no!
Oh, no! Gilliland and Plava come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in 4th place.
Quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lock up there from the 46 car. He's gone deep.
Whoa. I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been